afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Stock Market Today. Happy Friday. Ali Corum and Ed Carson here with a breakdown of the action today, what went down this week, and what you can expect in the coming week of trade. And we capped off the week, Ed, with some modest gains, which is pretty good considering the weak reports out of Amazon and Apple.
Yeah, it didn't look like we were going to have a good day overnight, but definitely a nice, resilient market. And we're going to look at a few stocks that are trading in and around buy zones, Edward Lifesciences, Google parent Alphabet, and Tesla rival Xpeng.
All right, we will do that first, checking in on the major indexes today here on Thinkorswim from TD Ameritrade. So we have the NASDAQ gaining about 0.3% today, the Dow up 0.25%, the S&P 500 up 0.2%, and the Russell also up slightly today. So two big blue bars in a row here for the NASDAQ.
Yeah, and it was a pretty good, strong week, and we'll show the weekly chart in a little while. But if you look at Tuesday and Wednesday, that wasn't so much fun because we closed at lows, and so that was a little troubling. But as it turned out, this is more like PG-13 jump scares than a slasher film. I mean, it was momentarily spooked you, but then everything turned out just fine, and nobody was hurt.
Yeah,
well, not nobody.
Yeah, well, not too big of tricks. Mainly treats in the market this week. And yeah, we'll be taking a look at a couple of stocks, but let's now go to the weekly chart as you mentioned here, Ed. So just continuing the strong move after that correction that wasn't too painful when we look back, but a quick recovery.
Yeah, really quick recovery. The NASDAQ finally hit a new high late this week. The Dow and S&P also hit highs a little earlier and did well. Strong gains, a lot of leaders, and leaders were coming out even early. So there was plenty of stuff to buy as we did get that follow through day, October 14th, and just kept on. So hopefully people have added exposure around that time because there's definitely been a lot of gains since then.
And what would you say, Ed, in terms of the sector strength? Does it feel pretty broad-based at this point? Because one of the themes that we've been talking about all year long is these rotations underneath the surface. Are we all swimming in the same direction, at least for now?
Maybe not all of the things and not all on the same day necessarily. It does feel like there's this and that, but growth is strong right now, but we're seeing medical products adding to that sort of growth. But steel stocks, which had been out of favor a little bit, are coming back. Energy stocks sort of up and down this week. Financial, but they've been strong. Financials have done reasonably well, even with the yields coming down. So yeah, there's a lot of sectors that are doing well. And you should try to be aware of that because you don't know when some of these are going to go. It wouldn't be surprising to see, say, the NASDAQ cool off for a little while. I mean, and it wouldn't be the worst thing. Maybe some stocks that had run up, had early entries, ran up to the right side of bases. They form handles or shelves, or they pull back to moving into averages. Just let it digest its gains. I mean, doesn't mean we will, but you certainly could see that. And maybe something else though will come on. Maybe industrials. Some of those look okay right now. I mean, some of them are coming up. So yeah, it's broad, not all on the same day, but we're all sort of like a sofa, again, nudging sort of forward. You push one end and then the other.
Mm-hmm. Well, we'll continue to keep our watch lists updated, and every Monday morning on IBD Live, we go through those industry group rankings and talk about trends that we're seeing. So we'll have to see what next week brings on that front. But now let's take a look at the S&P 500. So right around that 4,600 level, already in new high ground, as you mentioned, Ed. So quite a few up days in a row here at this point. So again, is this breakout for the S&P and NASDAQ going to lead to even more gains, or are we due for some sort of period where we're going to settle down a little bit or cool off?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, obviously it's continued to go higher. So you'd almost think, your default position would be that it would keep on going. That's what we talk about an uptrend is why we like an uptrend, because you figure that the odds are that it'll keep going, but we could certainly pause. This just shows you that, just had some nice solid action across the board, big caps and leading. And this rally has rallied on good news and it's taken bad news in stride. Like we rally on Tesla, we rally on, say Google and Microsoft. Ultimately, it wasn't necessarily the best action immediately on some of that. We hold up fine with Apple and Amazon's bad news. So it's pretty nice, strong, broad, resilient market right now.
Okay, and a quick look at blue chips this week as well on Marcus Smith. You can take a look at that by going to 0DJIA. So hovering around its levels that it's been trading at this week. So not a terribly outstanding week for the Dow, but it did end up gaining about 0.3%. So 4 up weeks in a row for the Dow as well.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's been lagging the relative strength line for years, really, which is not a real surprise in that regard. But it's doing well. Again, even the laggard is having a pretty strong run, so that's not so bad.
Well, speaking of laggards, what about IWM? Any improvement on that front this week for small caps? It seems like, when we get an up day, usually, or not usually, but oftentimes you'll see the Russell leading, or if we have a down day, you'll see the Russell getting hit the most. So small caps here continuing again. It seems like the theme with this is it's just hanging around in that same range, hasn't really powered ahead to take the lead.
Yeah, at least it's not dragging down. At least it's like, it did rise a little bit this week. I mean, not much. And that's sort of been the pattern recently, whereas the major indexes are sort of moving solidly higher. This one's just sort of nudging up there, at least not dragging down. I mean, there's breadth of leadership, and the market breadth has probably improved a little bit. But yeah, small caps are not participating the way that big caps are.
Okay, well, it did take small caps a while to catch back up after the coronavirus crash and then went on a nice run. So maybe we will see that at some point, but not right now. And then we also, before we take a look at some stocks, want to talk a little bit more about the action for growth this week. So Ed, talk to us about what we're seeing here with FFTY.
Well, this is also one reason why Tuesday and Wednesday it was a little bit disturbing. I mean, there were some negative reactions. There were some failed breakouts. So ultimately growth had a solid week. Basically by Friday, we got back to where we were on Monday. So, in the long run, if you sort of put this in a fund and you sort of check in every week, okay, you're fine. It wasn't so much. Some of those growth names did have some trouble on Tuesday and Wednesday, but it was short-lived. It's like, oh, that was not fun. Maybe people get shaken out of a couple of stocks, but the ultimate trend is still positive here.
And let's take a look at yields and see what happened there this week. So it looks like a pullback in the 10-year yield.
Yeah, and on Friday, it bounced a little bit on Thursday, came up on Friday morning. So I was looking, maybe we're coming right back up, but that reversed. So it was a pretty strong decline for the week. It's interesting. The Fed meeting is, we're probably going to get a taper decision on Wednesday. I mean, they've been telegraphing it for months, so it should be no surprise to anyone when they do that. The 2-year yield has been coming up, maybe even more than the 10-year, especially in the last few weeks. So that's a little bit more closely aligned, but it feels like the stock and bond market is prepared for this. Maybe, to a certain extent, they might even be welcoming it, because with inflation being high, you want to see the Fed be a little bit less aggressive with its monetary easing. And I'm sure the Fed will be as slow as it can, or like if there's any troubles in that regard, it is something to watch, because they will be slowly taking away the punch bowl. But, right now the bond market doesn't seem worried. And so the stock market isn't worried.
All right. Well, it's a story that we will continue to track closely as it continues to unfold. And now let's take a look at Google, GOOGL. This was an actionable trade idea on Wednesday with the strong move after its earnings report. And, it didn't start off the day with a breakout. It was up, but it slowly just started climbing really throughout the day. So during IBD Live on Wednesday, we were talking about it moving off the 50-day line. Then by the end of the session, it was above these short-term highs here. So we pegged that as an early entry. Then it ended up breaking out. So this was our inaugural IBD Live trade of the week. But Ed, what's your take on the action from Google this week and putting it in perspective of what we've seen from Google this year and what the environment is like right now for these mega cap tech stocks?
Well, Google stood out, especially compared to all these other ad-dependent firms like Facebook and Snap and Twitter, which all have their issues. Facebook, which is now Meta, of course. Google didn't look the best heading into earnings because it had a lot of red bars in there. It fallen back partly because of the Facebook and Snap news. But, it was really sort of almost ideal. Like, yeah, it came on slowly. So you could have bought it as it came above the 50-day line. Then you could have bought it as it came over that short-term level. And then by the end of the day, it was tripping the official buy point, though it technically closed a little below it. Didn't, it only closed above it today. So lots of opportunities to buy it. It's still not far away. It's still in the official buy point. It's not even that far above the 50-day line, all things considered. So it's still actionable now. This one looks quite strong. I mean, Microsoft is the clear leader in terms of like it's extended now, but Google is just performing very well. Long trend, it's on the long-term leaders. Both of them are on long-term leaders. Both of them are acting very well. They're both showing strong growth. And so while Microsoft is out, Google is definitely actionable.
Okay, thanks so much for that, Ed. And now we also want to take a look at Edwards Lifesciences. You mentioned medical products companies in focus. And so we will take a look at EW. What a reversal in Thursday's session, and continuing higher today with a gain of almost 3% and above average volume. So this is a pretty stunning reversal that we saw this week.
Yeah, that's a pretty big shift from the Thursday's low to Friday's close. Nice shakeout because they had earnings Wednesday night and they were just okay, and the guidance was okay. But obviously investors took, they saw, okay, they had some trouble because of the COVID wave. And I guess maybe investors are just, and they didn't have to. You don't know. It's a reaction to the news. Obviously, there was an initial reaction was negative, but ultimately investors felt that, like Edwards Lifesciences and some other medical products firms, that business is going to get better in the coming year, that there'll be more procedures as the pandemic maybe finally fades into the background, or at least becomes more manageable. So breaking that trend line, getting above the 50-day line, or convincingly off the 50-day line, above that short-term level, I'll offer, sort of early entries into this buy point. And like Google, it has earnings out of the way, which is always nice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. So medical products, an area that we're keeping an eye on, Dexcom, Tandem. Those are just a couple of other names that come to mind with
InMode. It had a nice move.
InMode.
Intuitive Surgical sort of inching towards a breakout. So there's a lot of sort of, it's nice to see that kind of action. You always nice to see friends kind of thing, or not, certainly there's really close connections, just see them all. This is why I didn't show Dexcom, because it's already gone. It's already gone.
Left the building.
It's left the building. So this one had great action today, but it's extended now. But Edward Lifesciences is definitely in buy range right now.
Yep. Reason why we're focused on this group, a lot of interesting movers. And last but not least, let's check in on XPEV, Xpeng, one of the China EV makers, setting up here. And, we didn't get that flying car out in time to stay true to the whole Back to the Future timeline. But is Xpeng gonna give us a flying car soon?
They debuted one last weekend, so there was like all this news. It was flying on Monday. It went up like 10% or so on Monday, same day that Tesla surged out. So it was a big day for EV stocks that day. It's now pulled back, so that buy point is still valid. You could use Tuesday's high, or you could use a trend line off the sort of quasi handle. So lots of different ways you could play it. Unlike Google and Edward Lifesciences, this one has news coming up because it has October sales, likely on Monday, and if not Monday, Tuesday. And that'll also come with NIO, and Li Auto will also have earnings. And then, as you say, I don't know if it's officially out there, but all of those automakers are likely to have earnings around mid-November. Maybe with their sales reports, they'll say, oh, by the way, we're going to have earnings. And so those will be important points that could be catalysts, good or bad, for these stocks.
Yeah, a lot of attention right now on Tesla and Ford as well this week, which had its earnings out. These China EV stocks, most of them have started their moves once again after taking a little bit of a break, getting hit here and there, in part due to China regulatory headlines, but a lot of interest in this space and a lot of ways to play it, whether you're looking at the EV stocks or more battery, lithium related plays, or even some more speculative EV names out there, Ed.
That's right. And this one, you could have bought this one. You're talking like off a trend line, but this one, now I like the fact that it's pausing. So it's taking a little bit of a break. As I said, like that's one reason why it'd be nice if the market took a break, is you could have some stocks like this pause. Maybe it will not pause after Monday, one way or the other, but be looking for those early entries. But yeah, a lot of interesting stuff in the EV space. Again, like Edwards Life Sciences, these things tend to move in packs, and EV stocks are definitely doing well right now.
Okay, Ed. Well, what should the game plan be for next week? It was a pretty strong week, all things considered. What do you make of where we're at in this market and what investors should be doing?
Definitely, I think that, they hopefully investors have gotten fairly invested over the last few weeks, because you don't know, some of the best gains and the best stocks come early on, and get that breathing room, get that space. Some of these stocks have moved up, and so now it's a little bit, even if the market moves sideways, you might be fine because these stocks are have nice trim, nice gains. But you can still be adding to it. I would say, obviously, you're always looking for your watch list, but as David Ryan has been saying the past few weeks, he's saying like, well, look for maybe sectors that are out of favor, not way out of favor, but just have come down, like, that rotation, and see which ones might be coming up. Obviously, steel stocks have done that over the past week or so. Medical products firms seem to be coming back. They weren't like really out of favor. Maybe machinery will be coming up. So that'd be something to do, just so you can stay in, maybe not jump always in there, but just be ready as the trends come, that you're not behind the curve. Don't try to cheat and try to get them as they're falling and say, I think this is going to come up. But as they start coming up, you start thinking, oh, okay, take a look, and, that way you can try to ride the rally as it sort of skips from one direction to another.
Good points there, Ed. Thank you so much for all of that. And make sure you tune in on Monday, everyone, on IBD Live, where the conversation will continue 9:20 a.m. Eastern for the first 90 minutes of trade. Our team is going to be talking about potentially actionable trade ideas, buy and sell rules that you can take with you beyond the live stream. So a lot of great education. We look forward to seeing you all next week on IBD Live, investors.com/IBD Live. We will see you there, and after the close too, right back here. Bye.